no peers.
Okay, so let's get going. Good evening. Paul Knapp, and welcome to the United South County Democratic Club meeting. 13 days to Election Day, but as you know, early voting has already started here in Florida. Several million ballots already have been delivered by the Postal Service or delivered to drop boxes to be cast. Here in South Florida, we need to encourage everyone to vote for the Biden-Harris ticket to offset the upstate Trump vote. Tonight we have a very special, we have the privilege of hearing from an award-winning author, professor, historian, political analyst. And his favorite president, I understand, is Harry Truman. I've heard him speak about Harry Truman several times. He's published 36 books on history and politics, and 5 works of fiction. But first, we have the honor of hearing from Terry Rizzo, the chairwoman of the Florida Democratic Party, as well as the Palm Beach County Democratic Party.
Do the numbers keep going up? How many participants?
Please mute yourself. Terry will give us an update on the current status of the election. Terry, where are you?
I'm here.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Paul, and thank you to everybody. And congratulations on this marvelous turnout, and of course for the one and only Dr. Robert Watson. We're so excited to hear from you and hear your thoughts. This is an exciting time. We are deep into the election now. We have been voting in Palm Beach County since the 24th of September when we started early voting. Voting doesn't happen on Election Day anymore. It's a month. It's a good month ahead of time, and we are well on our way. Monday was the start of early voting. And I'm happy to share some numbers on you because even in the torrential downpour on Monday and all over South Florida, the lines were long and people stuck it out. We saw people voting everywhere. And not just in South Florida, it was all over the state. People turned out and there was absolutely record turnout on a first day of early voting. But it's important to know that even before early voting, because of vote by mail, Democrats already have racked up over 500,000 vote by mail margin in vote by mail. And we have never, and I think, Robert, you can speak to this, we have never entered an election ever with a margin in advance, ever. Not that we've never had one, much less that much of one. So our strategy, as you all know, was, especially post-COVID, was to build our electorate through vote by mail and ensure our Democratic turnout had the opportunity to vote safely and healthily and turn out. So in terms of, as of yesterday, I'm going to just give you in terms of the turnout, and the drop box reports for the people who dropped their vote by mails out the drop box on the first day of early voting hit today. Sorry, so in other words, we dropped them off on Monday, but they weren't counted, and we finally found out today that 133,834 ballots were returned to drop boxes on Monday. Okay, so that reflected, and it's just astronomical at early voting sites, along with the vote by mails, of course, received prior to that. So our Democratic vote by mail return margin, now this is only vote by mail, is 527,836. Total vote by mail margin is over 500,000. And also, the request margin keeps going up. I keep thinking it's not going to go anywhere. It's going to stop or we're going to plateau off. We now have a vote by mail request margin of 802,907. So that still keeps going up. Although the last day to request officially is coming up fast. It's on the 24th. So what does this all mean? It all means that Democrats now have a vote by mail margin, as I told you, of 527,000. And we actually won day one of early voting. So by just a little, but it was less than 100 votes, but we actually won day one of early voting, which none of us saw. In fact, we all were prepared to lose on day one, but we didn't. We actually eked out a victory statewide. And so we won day one. Day two, the Republicans did outvote us by about 30,000, but we also got those 133,000 vote by mails in, so we actually ended up winning in terms of overall. So we are up. The upshot is we are going in ahead. We're going in now with almost a 500,000 vote margin overall. We've still got the rest of early voting. 50.2% of all Democrats in the state of Florida have a vote by mail ballot. The other half don't. That means we got to get them out at the polls. How do we do in Palm Beach County, folks? Real fast. Palm Beach County, we are mopping the floor. So we need to keep it up. In Palm Beach County, 143,073 Democrats have already voted by mail, all right? More than half of all Democrats NPAs have outvoted the Republicans. 57,000 NPAs had voted by mail. So the Democratic margin in vote by mail only is 89,490. So give yourselves a round of applause on that, all right? And in terms of early voting, days 1 and 2, 15,157 Democrats have voted, 12,640 Republicans, 6,169 NPAs. So Democrats have a margin in early voting on top of our vote by mail margin. So 2,514 early vote margin out of the first 2 days. Sorry, the first 2 days are reported. So our total margin now is over almost 93,000 in terms of voting. And we're continuing. We got the rest of early voting to go and election day. So the good news is we're ahead. We've got to stay ahead. We've got to work to get out every single vote. If you have a vote by mail ballot, get it in. Either return it. You still come to return it by mail safely. It will get there in time. Or drop it off at a drop box at any of the early voting sites, or go early vote instead. But vote. Every single vote matters. Don't leave anything on the floor. Talk to all your neighbors and get them in. We have to win big here in Palm Beach County. Even the red areas, the Democrats are outvoting Republicans now, but that will not continue. We know that many of the counties around the state are red, and our Democrats are being valiant, and they're getting those vote by mails in. 50 counties so far, the Democrats are outvoting the Republicans in vote by mail. It's incredible, but they will catch up. Even in Sumter and Collier and the Panhandle, they'll catch up. So we've got to make up the difference here, and we've got to get all those vote by mails in and keep that margin going, so that on election night, this is the last thing I'm going to say, Robert, because you can speak to this. On election night, when those ballots are counted, because we count them here in Palm Beach County, they must be in by 7 o'clock on election night. When the polls are closed, which will be 8 o'clock here at our time because of the Panhandle, which is on Central Time, a huge number is going to go up, and we want that number to be so big that the Republicans can't catch up. And so that's what we're going for. We want to shut it down on election night and make sure that everybody knows that Florida is going to go for Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and all of our ticket up and down the ballot. So, Robert, I want you to expand on that and tell everybody how key it is.
Henry, thank you. Our keynote speaker is a man who needs no introduction, but we'll introduce him anyway.
Yeah.
Dr. Robert Watson, renowned professor and historian, will discuss fact-checking Trump's lies, dangers in counting and certifying the vote. What if there is an election, tie, postponement, or refusal to leave office, and undermining the law, institutions, Justice Department, and the Constitution? Dr. Watson, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Ken. Let me first off by thanking Ken and Paul for the invitation to come here. They're friends, and I was clicking back and forth on the screen, and I saw so many friendly and familiar faces, so thanks for tuning in, everyone. Secondly, let me say hello to Terry, and let's all thank Terry as our amazing chair, our head of our Democratic Party of Florida. She does an extraordinary job. So thanks, Terry.
Thanks to everybody.
You're amazing. And Terry has done an extraordinary job, as you heard her say, mobilizing to get out to vote, mobilizing our vote by mail efforts all around the state, especially here in Palm Beach County. So her work has been extraordinary, and she's right. We are seeing record levels of turnout. We're seeing record numbers of requests for vote by mail, and especially here in Florida, but in many parts of the country. So it's really, really exciting. And Terry can tell you, historically, if you look at elections, overwhelmingly, if the turnout is high, guess who wins? Democrats. If the turnout's low, Republicans. So this is a very exciting number. We know Trump doesn't poll very highly. He hasn't been able to get above mid-40s to our presidency.
Robert, let me just mention, please, everybody mute themselves, please.
And we got pots and pans crashing. It must have been because I mentioned Trump. People were throwing at the screen. So, at any rate, so on one hand, the higher the voter turnout, Democrats win. Lower the voter turnout, Republicans win. Now, we know Trump's been stuck in low 40s, even high 30s, but for most of, for all of his presidency. historically, if you're below about 47%, you don't win re-election. So what we see is people like Jimmy Carter and others that were below Ford, that were below 47, they didn't win. People above that number, Reagan, Obama, Bill Clinton, so on, won re-election. So the good news, Trump is so far below that threshold. If history holds true, he should not win. On the other hand, what we know is unique about Trump is his base loves him. He could literally shoot someone in Manhattan on Fifth Avenue in broad daylight, and he wouldn't lose a single vote. That's the only true thing Donald Trump has ever said. So his base will come out. Polling has shown us that among Republicans, when they're asked to name their favorite president or the level of support, get this, everyone, Trump is averaging about 10 points above Ronald Reagan in terms of support within his party, which is unimaginable. So even though Trump's got low numbers, Terry is right, and Terry's work is important because Trump's base will crawl through glass to vote for this guy. So they are going to come out en masse. So it's so important for us to have this vigorous turnout. So Terry, thanks for all you do. I will probably share everybody's thoughts. I absolutely love the Democratic convention. My sister and brother-in-law and I were talking. We thought it was the best we'd ever seen. And the Republican convention was an embarrassment. But one of the things I liked the most about the Democratic convention, did you all see Terry?
Yes.
I was waving to the screen, but she didn't give me any love back. So thank you for that. I want to make another quick announcement, everybody, and that is I have two folks that are on this call, and I wanted to introduce them to Terry and Ken, Paul, and Senator Lori Berman. That's two of my graduate students, among the very, very best, Susan Fairmouth and Jarvis Roman. These are graduate students who want to get into politics. They're straight A students. They're young. They're go-getters. They're hardworking. They're responsible. So Susan and Jarvis, could you maybe say hello so that maybe everybody, you pop up on the screen so everybody can see you. Go ahead, Susan, ladies before gentlemen. Susan,
hello,
say
guys. Welcome.
Who's Jarvis? Okay, I see
How
Jarvis.
you doing? Can you see me now? Nice meeting you. Nice meeting you, Professor. Thank you so much for those words.
My pleasure. So Jarvis, go on to the chat and type in your phone number or email, and we've got some great Democrats here, our state senator, our state party chair, our county party folks. So Jarvis is a great person and be a good resource. Susan, are you on? I know she was trying to get on earlier. Okay, maybe she didn't get in. She was trying to get in earlier when we were on hold. So if anybody's looking for a reliable student, send me an email, and I'll be happy to forward Jarvis and Susan's information to everybody. Go-getters. Last thing, let me say, Senator Lori Berman is on the Zoom call. Lori, you want to say hello to everybody?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Stay safe and healthy, everyone. COVID is rising in the county. Do everything you can, but make sure in our starting tomorrow, 12 days, that you're out there doing everything you can, because we need to win this on November 3rd. Thank you so much for having me on this evening, and I can't wait to hear from my good friend and amazing speaker, Dr. Robert Watson.
Thank you, Senator Berman. And while we're on it, Senator Berman is going to be joining myself and Congressman Deutsch on November 5th at 12 o'clock noon. It's a free program for the public at Lynn University. We're going to be talking about the election, which will probably still be going on. We'll talk about COVID. We'll talk about the 50 lawsuits the Republicans will file the day after the election and all sorts of important issues. So Senator Berman and Congressman Deutsch, two of my absolute favorites. So just contact Lynn University, everybody. It'll be November 5th, a Thursday at 12 o'clock noon. It's a free program for the community. So with that, I'm going to try to share screen. I put a PowerPoint.
Is that on Zoom? Is that on Zoom?
Yep.
Thank you.
It'll be on Zoom. And the university has the Zoom code free, open for everyone. Well, there we go. If you can all see that, let me click on full screen. Boom. There we go. So I put a PowerPoint together for everybody. Here's what I want to do today. I want to do essentially two things. Number one, like Terry and Senator Berman and Ken and everybody, I have been getting inundated with phone calls and emails the last couple of weeks, especially the last couple of days. Every time I go to Publix or to a gas station, folks are yelling questions at me. So I made a list of the 10 most common questions dealing with the topics that you heard earlier. I want to provide an answer to those. We have all been listening to Trump. Some of us have heard Fox, OAN, Trump's supporters, and most of what they're saying is not true. So I wanted to fact check everything and go through those 10 questions that everyone has and let you know the real answer. That done, I want to offer a critique Trump and Trumpism. So let's get right to it. The first question I'm hearing from everybody, will there be a peaceful transfer of power? So let me first off say that this is one of the keys to a democracy, a peaceful transfer of power. It is something that has always happened in American history. That is, tanks don't roll out on the street. We recognize the person who won as the legitimate president, and so forth. Secondly, let me say there's a difference between a peaceful transfer of power and a civil transfer of power. Peaceful is the tanks don't roll out on the street, people don't take to the streets with civil unrest and violence. A civil transfer of power is when the outgoing administration cooperates with the incoming administration and shares national security information, briefings, logistical support, IT support, operational support, and so on. So let's say the following. Number one, every single transfer of power in American history has been peaceful. We as a nation have been blessed and relatively unique in the world. I worry that we will not have a peaceful transfer of power with Trump. He has said he won't go. He has said the only way he'll lose is if it's fraud, a hoax, or if the Democrats steal the election. He has called on his supporters to vote twice, to go to polls, and which is illegal, of course, to go to polls and watch people vote, which is also illegal. You can be a elections observer or watcher, but you must register beforehand. And even if you do so, you need to stand a certain distance apart from people. You cannot look over the shoulder and find out how they voted, nor can you harass people trying to vote. I'm sure Terry and Senator Berman are like me in that I've been getting too many phone calls from people who said, for example, just down the road from where I am, I'm on campus on 441 at the public library out there in Boca Del Rey border, 441. People have been saying Trumpers have been blowing horns, big flags, driving around the parking lots, cursing at people. So I worry about a peaceful transfer of power. Civil transfer of power. We have had a civil transfer of power in every election except two, and you're looking at them at the bottom of your screen. In 1800, Thomas Jefferson defeated Aaron Burr and John Adams. You're looking at Adams and Jefferson. Adams was the sitting president. Jefferson won the election. Now, the inauguration today is on January 20th at noon. Back then, it was on March 4th at noon. They moved the inauguration up in 1937 for FDR's second inaugural, part of the 20th Amendment from the 1930s. At any rate, John Adams was a great founding father and framer. He's one of my favorite. All of you are probably that know me know that I'm not a Jefferson person, but it pains me to say this. John Adams was a bit thin-skinned. He was so angry at Jefferson, who had been his friend and vice president, because back then the person that got the most votes became president, second most votes vice. They changed that in 1804, where the president and vice president went on a ticket like we see today. They changed it because of Burr shooting and killing Hamilton and the big controversy from 1800. So Jefferson had been Adams's friend and vice president. But Jefferson challenged Adams. It was an ugly race, and he beat him. So John Adams was so upset that the night before the inauguration, which would be March 3rd, 1801, Adams, under the cover of darkness, loaded up his carriage and snuck out of the capital city. Jefferson arrived, and there was no president. Jefferson walked down the street to the inaugural, and there was no president to be found. So there was no transition or transfer of power in a civil sense. The second one was my hero Harry Truman and Ike in 1953. Truman and Eisenhower had a very strange relationship. It was on again, off again, on again, off again. They went from dear friends to enemies in a matter of a snap. Unfortunately, in 1953, they were feuding. And Truman gave the staff off, and he was in the White House with scones and tea, ready to give Ike a tour, and Ike would not get out of the car and come in and see Harry. He stiffed him. Truman had provided supports for Eisenhower to help get him up to snuff. Eisenhower turned a lot of those down. So those were the two examples where we did not have a civil transfer of power, but we still had a peaceful transfer of power. Now, what's really important these days is it must be civil and peaceful. Remember, the eyes of the world are watching, allies and enemies. And importantly, for this reason, can you imagine the difficulty in transitioning and stopping a new administration? First off, there are between 4,000 and 5,000 hires that a president must make. And they only have from early November till January 20th to make all these appointments. Over 1,000 of those appointments must be confirmed by the Senate. You have to do background checks, vet everybody. That's an enormous, enormous undertaking. An even bigger undertaking is national security. So what we've seen, Truman was the first president to do this. Truman, of course, was picked by FDR in 1944 to be his third vice president for his fourth term in office. FDR died only 82, 83 days into his fourth term, passing on April 12th, 1945 of a cerebral hemorrhage. Truman had not even been briefed. He had not been prepped. He had not even been given information on the Manhattan Project. So Truman becomes president during one of the most critical hours in American history, and you talk about having to hit the ground running. So Truman started putting in place plans so that the vice president and the next administration would be fully briefed and prepped. In his second term, Alvin Barkley was his VP. He's the first vice president who was invited to attend presidential meetings and sit in cabinet meetings. Therefore, he would be prepped. So Truman had prepped Eisenhower's aides, but Ike stiffed Harry. Ike then provided a briefing and a prep for Kennedy. Kennedy is the one who really put a lot of effort into it to what we know today as the transition. However, tragically, Kennedy would never be able to use that because he was shot and killed, of course, in November of 1963. So Lyndon Johnson prepped the Nixon team. From then on, every single outgoing administration has done the following. They provide operational, logistical, IT support. Think about all the password, the computer system, right, everyone? Imagine a new administration taking office when they, by the way, it's not my cell phone, all the new folks entering the meeting, if you're wondering what's beeping. Little things like everybody needs to know the passwords and what type of computer systems and operational systems are up and running. So the outgoing administration provides all that. They provide national security briefings. And what happens, and it's happening right now, even before the election, agency transition liaison teams. So, for example, Obama did this for Trump. Each of his 15 cabinet departments, he had a team that started prepping all the Trump people so they could be prepared for day one, whether it's Justice, State, Treasury, or whatever the department is. Joe Biden is already doing this right now. He has his transition teams up and running. He's not jinxing himself. Everybody needs to start before the election. Now, that's what happens. There's also $7 million as of 2010 put aside to pay for office space. Obama pushed that, and he was right to do it. And Biden has office space. He has a team, including Mayor Pete, and a real A-team already set up. Now, that's the good news. Here's the bad news. Trump is not cooperating. Somehow you knew I was going to say that. The concern is, even though Biden had been vice president and he's going to put together one hell of a team, no one has gotten daily national security briefings for the last 4 years except the Trump people. The Biden people need to know that, or we could be vulnerable when Biden comes into office. So Trump has to begin to cooperate with Biden. Everybody always said that, back in 2016, I asked so many people, how on earth could you vote for Trump? He's a corrupt realtor who's been sued 3,500 times. He's a womanizer and a compulsive liar. And a lot of people would finally justify it by saying, look, Trump will grow into the office. He'll mature. He's gotten worse. So I'd like to say that I would be confident in that after the election, if Biden wins, Trump will come on board and cooperate, but I don't think he will for a nanosecond. I don't think Trump's people will cooperate. I don't think Trump will cooperate, and that could jeopardize national security. The only scenario I see for Trump cooperating is if he cuts some kind of a deal so he's not going to go off to jail after this darn thing. But other than that, that's the concern. The other concern I have is for a truncated transition. You only have from early November till January 20th to get ready to go and govern on day one and hire thousands of people. What if this election drags into December? Biden will have a truncated time to appoint his team, and that could be very problematic. So that's the first one. Here's the second point. Oops. Will the Democrats pack the Supreme Court? Okay. So the first question I get from people all the time is, the Democrats would need to amend the Constitution if they want to change the number of justices from 9 to down to 6, 7, 8, or up to 10, 11, 12. The answer is no. Article 3 of the Constitution is about the judicial branch. Article 1 is about the legislative, 2 about the executive, 3 about the judicial branch. Senator Berman has a law degree. She knows all about this. And Article 3 of the Constitution does not mention how many justices are on the Supreme Court. So, if the Democrats want to pack, that means adding justices. If they want to unpack, that means reducing the number of justices. They do not need a constitutional amendment. All they need is an act of Congress. So if the Democrats have the House and Senate, they could do it. The number of justices we have today came from the 1789 Judiciary Act. So when the framers put together the Constitution, they left it rather vague. Article 2 about the president, Article 3 about the courts are very vague. They say virtually nothing. Article 2 about the president simply says that a president shall have a State of the Union address, get this, from time to time, end quote. Doesn't specify where or how. And starting with Jefferson in 1801, he stopped delivering the State of the Union address. Instead, he wrote it down. Why? Because Jefferson was like me, and he was very shy about public speaking. And it was written down and not delivered for years. Woodrow Wilson brought that back in 1913. At any rate, so the framers left the judiciary section, the Supreme Court vague. Why? Because by the end of the hot, humid summer of 1787 with the Constitutional Convention, they were at wit's end. They were disagreeing. They were worried that the Constitution might not be ratified. Therefore, they just left the judiciary section as is. They got the Constitution ratified, and they figured that they would correct it through 3 things. Number 1, they all knew who the president would be, George Washington. And he would create something better than they, in their collective wisdom, could design, and darn it, he did. Number 2, you're looking at him in the lower left. That's John Jay. Everyone knew that John Jay, who Washington loved, would be the first Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. And Jay was, like Washington, a great American, a man of honor, intelligent. And Jay would carve out precedents for the court. Number 3, they knew they would need legislation. So one of the first bills introduced, the first bill taken up by the first Senate, was the 1789 Judiciary Act. That's the legislation that organized the Supreme Court, including how many justices should be on the Supreme Court. The original number of justices was 6. A chief and 5. Only 6 justices. Not 9 like today. 6 justices. That's the way it was set up. And over the ensuing years, you're looking at a picture on the right of John Marshall, the great Marshall, 4th Chief Justice, who served for a whopping 34 years, and he finished John Jay's work, and that's the Supreme Court that we know. So, if you're doing the math, The Democrats could pack or unpack the court, and the 9 wasn't the original number. So how many justices were there, should there be? Everyone, the number of justices on the Supreme Court has been changed many times. It's been packed, moved up, and unpacked, moved down. In 1801, John Adams reduced the number of justices. He unpacked, moved it down to 5. In 1802, and you can see it on the PowerPoint there, Thomas Jefferson moved it up to 6. At the end of Jefferson's term, his second to last year, he moved it up to 7. Andrew Jackson packed it by moving it to 9 in 1837. Abraham Lincoln increased it to 10 in the middle of the Civil War. After the Civil War under Andrew Johnson, we unpacked it by 2. And the final move was by Ulysses Grant in 1869. He set it at 9 justices, and that's where it's been ever since then. Why 9? Why did Grant go with 9? Because there were 9 circuit courts. Appellates. So therefore, the number of justices should equal the number of courts, 9. Today, everyone, there are 13. So the precedent could be that it would be within Biden's right, and it's precedented, to move the number up to 13 so that the number of justices on the Supreme Court equals the number of courts. Got it, everyone? That's where it comes from. FDR tried to pack the court in 1937. I thought he was wrong to do so. He realized it and backed off of it. He was looking at adding 1 justice for every justice over the age of 70. Why did FDR consider that? Because he was trying to save the American economy and prepare for World War II, and yet the Supreme Court had conservatives on that were dragging their feet on his New Deal and military preparedness. I have a version of this to share with you. Judge Barrett, Amy Coney Barrett, she's been driving me crazy in her hearings. She avoids answering any question by citing originalism. In all of her writings and all of her rulings, it's originalism. What is that? You have 2 basic views of the Constitution. Conservatives and Republicans, the more conservative Republicans, favor originalism. That suggests we should only understand the Constitution in a very narrow, strict sense, as the original framers understood the Constitution when they put it together in 1787. Now, modern Republicans tend to reject this because, after all, the original Constitution didn't say anything about genetic research, machine guns, nuclear weapons, space travel, or anything else. How do you go back to the original? So since Justice Barrett keeps citing original, what I think we should do is we should go back to the original Constitution. Therefore, we only have 6 justices. We unpack Trump's 3 justices. We unpack all 3 of them and take it down to 6. So if she wants originalism, there we go. Second interpretation of the Constitution is implied powers. This is what Democrats and liberals do. We try to figure out what did the framers, what was their intent? What were the implications? And that way the Constitution for the last 2+ centuries is a living, breathing, relevant document. So what did the framers intend? Implications of it, and so on. That legal precedent was developed in George Washington's first year in office by Alexander Hamilton. Washington had an Indian treaty and some other things that he looked at the Constitution, and it didn't say anything. It didn't say you could. It didn't say you could not. So Washington asked Hamilton to figure it out for him, and in one night, Hamilton wrote a legal brief this thick that came up with the notion of implied powers. And that's what most justices, even some Republicans and Democrats and liberals do. Barrett is a dinosaur. If she goes back to her originalism, guess what that means, everybody? Blacks are 3/5 of a person. Women don't vote. Slavery's okay. And Clarence Thomas married to a white woman. That marriage, forget about it, because that was not legal at the time. So much for her originalism. I have a bunch of other things here, but I'm going to skip for the sake of time and move forward. So the Democrats could pack or unpack the Supreme Court. Now, Republicans are claiming if they do that, it's unprecedented and it's not fair, it's illegal, it's unconstitutional. We've heard that from Fox, OAN, and Trump's supporters. They're wrong on all of those notes. So first off, Merrick Garland, you all remember him, Obama's nominee for the Supreme Court. Garland was nominated over 8 months before the election, and yet Mitch McConnell, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, every single Republican said it is unprecedented for a president to get an appointment in their last year. It never happens. That was completely untrue. There were over 30 cases where presidents got a judicial appointment in their last year in office. So they were lying to you. And Garland had over 8 months. Now, here's the other thing. Mitch McConnell wouldn't even give Garland a hearing, or much less an up or down vote. But Garland wasn't the only one. McConnell held off on hearings or votes for dozens and dozens of Obama's appointments for the appellate court and the circuit courts. Dozens of them. You heard Trump during the first presidential debate claim that he's made 200 appointments to the courts. That's not true. He's made a little over 120. Still, that's pretty much a record. No president in their first term gets to make that many. And here's the pickle. Trump made most of those in the first weeks of his presidency because McConnell refused to let Obama get dozens of appointments in the district courts, dozens on the appellate, and 1 Supreme Court seat. So you can argue the only other president, and I've said this for 4 years, the only other president who had such a legacy of the court was George Washington, who appointed the original 6. Trump has appointed more and shaped the future of jurisprudence and the Constitution more than any other president, which is alarming. So let's fast forward to Judge Barrett. So the Republicans are pushing her while we're voting. You heard Terry say how many millions of people have already voted around the country, how many thousands upon thousands in Florida have already voted. So is it legal to push someone this late and this close to an election? Yes, it's legal. Is it constitutional? Yes. Is it with precedent? Not really. We really only have one other president who did that, and that was John Adams as he was leaving office. But all subsequent presidents created the precedent that when you're this close to an election or when people are voting, you hold off until after the election. Case in point, October 1864, Civil War. Abraham Lincoln gets an appointment to the bench. It's days before the election. Lincoln says that would not be proper. I'm going to go with the precedent. We need to let the people speak and vote. I will wait and fill this after the election, and Lincoln did. So there's the precedent. So I'm getting a kick out of Republicans saying Democrats want to pack or unpack the court, and it's unprecedented. So what I did was I looked up every effort in the states to pack or unpack the courts since 2000, so the last 20 years. There have been 10 efforts to increase or decrease the size of the court in the state Supreme Court in our states. Get this, all 10 were done by which party? Republicans. So don't listen to this nonsense with them saying it's unprecedented, it's the Democrats. All 10 times in the last 20 years, Republicans have tried to pack and unpack state Supreme Courts. In 2 cases, they were successful. I put them here on the screen. Arizona and Georgia, they were able to pack by adding 2 seats. And 8 cases were a failure. Twice in Florida, and you all remember this. I know Senator Berman and Dr. Ken and Terry remember this. We tried to increase by 8 the number of justices on the court, and we tried to create 2 Supreme Courts. How do you explain this? Jeb Bush, Rick Scott, Ron DeSantis, and the Republicans in the legislature. It's just horrific. So yes, it would be precedented if the Democrats did it, and the Republicans are the ones that always do it. So there's some proposals out there by legal scholars, everyone. A large group of Ivy League law professors, former judges, and so on, are arguing now that the high court has been politicized. It's in jeopardy in the other courts by Trump. Many of Trump's appointments to the district and appellate courts are wildly unqualified to be on that. So here's what they're proposing. proposing to try to save the courts. One proposal is for 15. So we packed by 9 to 15. We had 6 seats. But it would be 5 justices picked by the Democrats, 5 picked by the Republicans to try to eliminate the highly partisan nature of the court. And then the sitting 10 justices would then pick the final 5. And they would pick them from the appellate courts. Because in an appellate court, you have the experience to serve on the Supreme Court. So those remaining 5 would be rotated every 1 year from the appellate courts. The second proposal that's floating is 9 rotating justices on the Supreme Court. We give them limits, like 1 year, 5 years or something, and they rotate from justices on the appellate court. The third proposal is for term limits. This is the one I favor. Those of you that know me have heard me say for my entire 30-year career that I favor term limits for the Supreme Court. I oppose term limits in Congress. I actually oppose them in the presidency too, by the way. Let the voters vote. There's your term limit. But my concern about the Supreme Court is, one, you have 9 people serving life terms who influence the Constitution in this country. In a democracy, 9 people should not have their say. Hell, right now, Mitch McConnell is holding up the entire Democratic experiment, right, everyone? Hundreds of Democratic bills have been passed, and McConnell won't even give them the time of day, much less schedule them, much less vote. The second reason I favor term limits is if you look at how long those 9 justices serve on the court. It's not uncommon to have people serving 20, 30 plus years. Kavanaugh, Barrett, and Gorsuch, the 3 Trump appointees, were all young. A lot younger than me, which means they're really young. So theoretically, Trump's 3 appointments could easily, if they're in the late 40s, could easily serve the court for the next 4 decades. Your grandchildren and great-grandchildren are going to have to deal with that. I have favored a 10-year term limit on the high court for my entire career. So where does the notion of judicial term limits and a life term come from? It comes from 2 things. One is British common law. It's called the Good Behavior Clause. And since it comes from British common law, they even spell behavior like the English with the U in the word. Good Behavior Clause. What does this mean? This means you serve as long as you're serving with good behavior. The Constitution, the framers looked at this. They thought it made sense in Article 1, Section 1, the Good Behavior Clause. 3 advantages of the Good Behavior Clause. 1, it forms as a type of check and balance on executive or legislative power. If you have justices that are serving for life, that's a check on legislative power. Number 2, it insulates the justices from political pressures. They don't have to worry about the political whims because they're in there for life. 3, it therefore creates an independent judiciary. However, when the framers were talking about this, 1787, and when it was developed in British common law centuries ago, people lived to be 30 or 40. So they could not fathom somebody living and serving on the court for decades and decades and decades. The oldest person most of the framers and founders knew was Ben Franklin, who lived to be in his 80s, which is sort of like the new 142. So I think we need to get rid of that, and we could do that. At the bottom of the screen, take a look. I looked up the median term, the median amount of time, the average amount of time that a Supreme Court justice has served since 1981. Get this, 26 years. That's ridiculous. Justices Douglas, Field, Black, and Stevens all served well over 3 decades on the court. Douglas, 36 and a half years. That's not right in a democracy. So I'm going to skip this for sake of time. The 4th question I'm getting from everybody is, with COVID, what would happen if Trump died? Or what would happen if any of the candidates passed? This is morbid, but it's something we need to look at. Now that we live in a nuclear age, now that we live in the age of pandemics, now that there's the potential for biological and chemical warfare, think about the dangers of having a State of the Union address or an inaugural when all of Congress and our government gathers So we do need to look at this. We call it the line of presidential succession. So what happens if the president dies? What happens if the vice dies? And so on. It was discussed in the Constitution, Article 2, as you can see on the screen, about the presidents. If the president dies, the vice president becomes president. Now, here's the kicker. If you go back into the 1820s, 30s, and 40s, the prevailing view of most lawyers and judges was the vice president becomes the president just for a short period of time. What he should do is call immediately for a new election. Our first president to die in office was William Henry Harrison, old Tippecanoe, who died in early 1801. His vice president was Tyler too, John Tyler. John Tyler is easily one of our worst presidents who did virtually nothing. Both political parties threw him out of the party. I didn't know you could be thrown out of a party. Tyler's record is thin with one exception. Tyler, everybody said, okay, you're the president, step down and call for an election. He said, no, I'm staying in for 4 years. So thanks to Tyler's stubbornness, we have a precedent that the vice serves the remaining 4 years. Now, in 1792, there was a law, and here's what it said. If the president dies, the vice president becomes president. If the president and vice president die, the president pro tem of the Senate, that's the ranking member of the Senate, becomes president. If those three die, the Speaker of the House becomes president. This was changed in 1886 after Vice President Hendricks died under Cleveland. They passed a new law, and they took the Speaker and the President pro tem out of the equation. Now it went President, Vice President, and it went to the Cabinet. That was changed again in 1947, and this is our current presidential line of succession. Who put it in place? My buddy, Harry Truman. So as a vice president who saw what happened when FDR died, and as a vice president who knew about nuclear war, Truman wanted to make sure we had a clear line of succession. So here's what Truman proposed, and this is what we have today. It's the president, then vice president, then Speaker of the House. Truman wanted 2 people that were elected in before we went to the cabinet because they're not elected, they're appointed. So it goes Speaker and then President pro tem. So you're looking at the 4 of them, Pelosi, and the President pro tem is Chuck Grassley, Republican from Iowa. If those 4 die, it then goes to the cabinet in the order that the cabinet departments were created. So we have 15 cabinets, and they go in this order. The first one is the State Department. That was the first created when Jefferson was picked by Washington. That means Mike Pompeo is next. The next one is Treasury, when Washington picked Hamilton. That means then it goes to Mnuchin. Next is Defense, which means it's Asper. And then the 4th one is Justice, which means it's Barr. And then after that, we go back through the other 11, and we end up at number 15, Homeland Security. So that's the line of succession. Now, after 9/11, when we knew that 4th plane was probably headed to the Capitol or White House, there was a continuity in government crisis commission put together. Now, I don't know exactly what they said, and nor does anybody who's online telling you, because it was top secret. But here's what we think they came up with. If something happened to the 4 people you're looking at on the screen and all 15 cabinet secretaries, then what happens? Most folks believe it then goes to governors of the states in the order that the states came in to the Union. So we go through all 50 and end up with Hawaii that came in 1959. What happens if all the governors die? Well, then we just kiss our ass goodbye because it's all over. The 20th Amendment made it clear that if the president-elect dies, the vice president-elect becomes president. Now, there's 3 different categories here. If you run for president, you're a presidential candidate. If you win the party nomination at the National Convention, you go from presidential candidate to presidential nominee. If you win on election day, you go from nominee to president-elect. So the 20th Amendment in the 1930s said, if the president-elect dies, the vice president-elect becomes president. And who becomes vice? The vice president who's ascended to the presidency picks the next vice president, and there we go. Now, what happens if the presidential nominee dies? So right now, Trump and Biden Pence and Harris are president and vice presidential nominees. No one's elected yet. So we don't have a law to cover that, everybody. But the DNC and the RNC have rules. And what they say is, if Trump or Biden passes, they will work with the vice president and the party to pick someone new. So those are the rules. The 25th Amendment, this comes from the 1960s. What this is what if the president is unable to be president because, let's say, they're mentally insane? Not that we have such a thing, right? So Trump, of course, we should have evoked the 25th Amendment years ago. He's certifiably mad. He's knowingly infecting people. He doesn't believe in science. He's lying. He's cozying up to dictators, disagreeing with his own government. He didn't know Finland was a country. He didn't know Puerto Rico was an island, right? He thought Andrew Jackson fought in and opposed the Civil War, and before it. He thought Frederick Douglass, the great slave orator, was still alive. Trump's mentally insane, but the Republicans haven't moved on it. There's two ways to remove a president according to the 25th. Number one, the vice president and a majority of the cabinet. So that means 8 out of 15 have to remove the president. Number two, the vice president and a majority of Congress have to remove the president. The president is then given a few days in writing to say, I'm not insane, I should be able to serve. And then once that happens, Congress has 20 days to convene and either vote to keep the president out of office or to restore him to office. Let me move on. The fifth question everybody's asking me, what's going to happen on election night, November 3rd? So first off, people are saying, must the results be announced on election night? Trump has said we need to know on election night. You've heard the talkers on Fox, OAN, and the hate radio show like Alex Jones types. They're all saying the vote needs to come in election night. The answer is no. We don't have to know on election night. Have there been elections that have gone well beyond election night? Yes. Have we had elections, presidential elections, that have lasted days? Yes. Weeks? Yes. Months? Yes. Look at the bottom of my screen there, at my bullet points. Here's the two dates I want you all to remember. Number one, by law, we have 35 days to count the vote. 35 days after the election takes us to December 7th. So when you hear Republicans saying we need to know the vote a day or two later, and 3-4 days after the election, when states like Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and Michigan, who are swing states, who don't allow for an early counting of vote by mail, when they're still counting and you hear Trump saying cut it off, no, we have 35 days. Here's the second date I'd like you to all know. When must the electors of the Electoral College, when must they be seated and certified? Here's the answer. The first Monday after the second Wednesday in December. That is December 14th. So we have until December 14th for the electors to be seated. Now, what's going to happen on election night is the following. We're not going to know who won. Trump will get up and announce that I won. It was the most beautiful election in history. I'm the greatest president ever. It was the biggest landslide. Then he will claim that to continue to count votes is a hoax, is a fraud, and the Democrats are trying to steal the election. He will call on his supporters. There will be civil unrest in the streets. The Republicans will file countless lawsuits in all the swing states and so forth. Now, what concerns me is there are 6 swing states that are very important and right now are very, very tight. The Republicans control the legislatures in all of those 6 states. So, Election Day must be the first Tuesday after the first Monday in December. That's Tuesday, November 3rd, and I have it on your screen, since 1845. You've heard Trump say early voting is a sham. Well, get this. 4/5 of all the states have early voting. You heard Terry talk about the remarkable job we're doing in Florida, the remarkable job she and our party chairs, like Ken and others, have been doing. 4/5 of the states have early voting. Vote by mail. Trump said it's a fraud. It's a hoax. Every single state has vote by mail, everybody. All the states have it. 2/3 of the states have no excuse vote by mail. Like Florida, we're one of them. A few years ago, we we reformed our system. You have no excuse to vote by. You all remember back in the day when we used to have a reason to request an absentee ballot? Not anymore. You can just say, I want to vote by mail. And as Terry was saying, you get a record number of folks coming in. So 2/3 of the state. 5 states, including Hawaii, where I used to live and teach, have an automatic system where the vote by mail is automatically mailed out to voters. Are votes by mail riddled with fraud, and is there a history of this? No. Trump says it every day, but scholars who study this for a living say absolutely, positively not. The last point on this one I wanted to mention, you heard Trump once say about postponing the election. Jared Kushner, in an interview, brought this up. Can the president postpone the election? The answer is no. No by law, no by constitution. Now, can the Congress postpone the election? The answer is yes, Congress could. Let's go to the next point, number 6. Will the Republicans file lawsuits? Yes, in fact, they already have. There have been over 40 lawsuits filed by the Republican National Committee all across the country. And what they're trying to do is by the Republicans filing over 40 lawsuits, what they're trying to do is suppress the vote. They're suing to try to limit the counting of votes by mail. They're trying to make it harder to process vote by mail applications. They're trying to, and the list goes on and on and on. So the day after the election, the Republicans will file dozens of additional lawsuits. They have armies of lawyers ready to go. So Terry and Ken and Senator Berman and our other leaders, we need to make sure we have lawyers ready to go. You all, when you go to vote, keep your cell phone charged and ready. If you see irregularities, if you're turned back, call one of these hotlines or call our local Democratic Party or the state party right away. Put the numbers in your phone before you go to vote. If there's people intimidating and not staying within 100 feet as required by law, call. If you show up on election day and your name is not on the rolls, you can by law fill out an affidavit and sign it and a provisional ballot. You can do that. And then the supervisor of elections office will figure that out later that evening. If you requested a vote by mail and you decide you want to vote early or the day of the election, you still can. Just bring along your vote by mail and you have to submit it to them to prove that you're not voting twice. If your vote by mail, if you're not sure if the supervisor of elections in your county, Palm Beach County, has received it, simply go on their website and they track this. You can punch it in on the website and they'll tell you if they receive the vote by mail. The Republicans are doing a lot of other corrupt things, but I'm way over time, so let me move forward. Number 7. The Republicans, as I said, have already filed over 40 suits. In fact, 15 states, they've been filing lawsuits. Little things like this in Ohio and in Texas. By law, you have to have a drop box in every county to drop off your votes. What Republicans are doing is only allowing 1 drop box per county. Now think of Texas, everyone. Some counties in Texas are larger than nations, and you have 1 drop box. That's what the Republican governor of Texas has done. So if you take a look at this list here, the Republicans all around the country are trying to suppress the vote and disenfranchise voters. They are bound and determined to steal this election. Number 7 question. Is there a nuclear option? This is what people are asking. Yes, there's 2. So what happens if we run into December and we still don't know who the president is? Is there a mechanism or kind of like a late tiebreaker? Yes. Here's the first one. The Constitution in Article 2 says, if you come up with such a situation as this, the state legislature can appoint in a manner that they deem to be fitting. So the state legislatures could appoint the electors to cast a vote. Historically, has a state voted for one person and party, but the state legislature refused to certify and certified the other slate of electors to change the election? Yes, several times. So there is a precedent for it. I think Biden's going to win the popular vote big. I'm going to show you the numbers I have in a minute. I think Biden's going to win the Electoral College vote big. The only thing that keeps me up at night is the Republicans in red states I think are going to throw away hundreds of thousands, if not a million plus votes by mail. I think they're going to try to steal the damn election and manipulate it. I think you could see a scenario where this thing drags out for days or weeks, and Trump is appealing to his base. There's conspiracies. The public doesn't realize you have 35 days to count, and Trump's calling it a hoax every waking minute. He then calls those 6 Republican legislatures in the 6 big swing states and says, certify me. By now, I don't think any of us would be responsible if we say the Republicans will behave ethically and responsibly and honorably. There's nothing that they wouldn't do at this particular point. So that concerns me. Right now, of the 50 state legislatures, the Republicans control 28 of them, including Florida, as Senator Berman knows better than the rest of us. The second nuclear option is the Constitution lays out, and in law has statutes have reiterated, there is a tiebreaker mechanism in the Electoral College. So there are 538 electors. That's 435 in the House, plus 100 in the Senate equals 535, plus 3 for each seat equals 538. Be president, you need a majority. That's 270. First person to 270, it's over. So what happens if no one gets to 270, or we have both candidates in the 200s, but states can't certify? Has this happened historically, where we've had to have a tiebreaker? Yes, multiple times. So what it's called for is that the House of Representatives elects the president. Now, Democrats, before you exhale, because the Democrats right now, under Pelosi, we have a large majority in the U.S. House. But that's not how it works. Here's how it works. Each state gets 1 vote. So the 27 representatives from Florida split 1 vote. Right now it's 14-13 Republican, so Florida would cast its 1 vote for Trump. All 50-some in California get 1 vote. They're Democratic, so they would cast their 1 vote for Biden. The 1 representative in Wyoming, they only have 3 electoral votes. That's Dick Cheney's daughter. She would cast her 1 vote for Trump. So it would go state by state, 1, 1, 1, 1. You need a majority. That means somebody needs 26 of the 50 states. Get this. Right now, even though the Democrats have a large margin in the House of Representatives, in terms of how the state delegations are, 26 of the states are Republican. So if we came to a House of Representatives tiebreaker, Trump would win the presidency by 1 single vote, if we came to that. Number 8, have these scenarios ever happened before? The answer is yes. I'm going to give you 3. So if we run past November 3rd, and there's lawsuits, and nobody can figure out how to count the vote, and they start saying what can and cannot happen, here's 3 precedents from presidential history that could give us guidance. The first one was from 1800. You're looking at Jefferson, and that's not John Adams, it's Aaron Burr. Jefferson and Burr beat John Adams in 1800, but they tied 73 to 73. Perfect tie in the Electoral College. Now, what's the mechanism? It's that tiebreaker that I just explained. Every state gets 1 vote. So they went state by state in the House. Each House delegation got 1 vote. So they re-voted it, and guess what? It was a tie. So they re-voted it again, and it was a tie. The month of November, the whole month of December, the month of January, and the whole month of February. For 4 months, they had tied ballots. Get this, 35 tied ballots over 4 months. Now, remember I said at the outset of this lecture, the inauguration was not until March 4th back then. They moved it up with the 20th Amendment in 1937. So it took 4 months. They went all the way to the inaugural before they had a tiebreaker. How was the tie broken? Well, they couldn't break the tie. On the 36th ballot, Alexander Hamilton, and I will refrain from rapping this. Okay, Bess? I won't make you sick by rapping it. Alexander Hamilton, plus Jarvis, my student, I don't want him to think his history professor's rapping. So, anyways, if you've heard me rap Hamilton, I can actually rap it, right, everybody? Okay, so here's what happened. Alexander Hamilton orchestrated a tiebreaker. Now, the problem for Hamilton is his 2 enemies were Jefferson and Burr. Talk about the fire or the frying pan. That's like saying Trump or Pence. But Hamilton picked Jefferson because Jefferson was at least sane. So Jefferson became president by that tiebreaker after 4 months. So keep that in mind. Here's the second time we had a precedent. 1824. That's Andrew Jackson on the top and John Quincy Adams on the bottom. I don't like Jackson. I do like John Quincy, so it pains me to say this. It was a four-way race in 1824. Jackson was ahead in the popular vote. Jackson was ahead in the electoral vote, but he didn't have a majority. John Quincy was in second place on vote. But what happened, the House got together, they didn't like Jackson, so the House orchestrated a vote which we called the corrupt bargain in history. Henry Clay, one of my least favorite people in history, and they picked John Quincy Adams. So could the House flip the election and orchestrate their own vote? Yes. It's allowed for in the Constitution, and it's happened. The third time it happened, and then I'll move on, was in 1876. That guy on the left is Rutherford B. Hayes. You thought he was the bass player for ZZ Top. And the guy on the right is Samuel Tilden. So Hayes and Tilden were running in 76. Hayes, the Republican, the very young-looking Tilden, the Democrat. Tilden was ahead of Hayes, but he was just shy of a majority of the Electoral College. He needed one more state to flip. The problem was 3 southern states refused to certify their electors. Louisiana, South Carolina, and see if you can guess what the third state was. Of course, Florida. So those 3 states, why wouldn't they certify? Because they didn't like Reconstruction, which was Lincoln's policy after the Civil War. They wanted it done, so they were holding that as ransom. So here's what the House of Representatives did in 1876. Instead of 1 vote per state delegation, they appointed a committee to pick the president. Could they do that? Yeah. They put 15 people on the committee, 8 Republicans, 7 Democrats, and by an 8-7 partisan line vote, Rutherford B. Hayes became president by 1 vote in 1876. Number 9, what's going to happen with the Electoral College? Disregard the popular nationwide polls. We know Biden is up massively in the polls, but we don't have a nationwide election. It's state by state by state. We have 51 elections on November 3rd, all the states and D.C. Each state has a slate of electors equal to their congressional delegations. So 27 reps, 2 senators from Florida, we have 29. Hawaii has 2 and 2, they have 4. Now the concern is it's a winner-take-all system, which means if you win Florida by 1 vote or 1 million votes, you get all 29 of our votes. That's why 6 times in history, 1800, 1824, 1876, 1888, 2000, and 2016, you had one person with more electoral votes, the other person with more popular votes, and the Electoral College did not produce a clear-cut president. So it's a winner-take-all system. To make it even more convoluted, 2 states don't have a winner-take-all system. That's Nebraska and Maine. Years ago, they amended their state constitutions to create what we call a district plan. For example, Maine has 2 congressional districts. So whomever wins District 1, Biden gets that 1 vote. Whomever wins District 2, let's say it's Trump, he gets that 1 vote. Could Florida do that? Yeah, if we amended our constitution. Or the states could amend their constitution to just create a popular vote. So all those are options. Or we can have a nationwide constitutional amendment. Now, we have faithless electors. That means there are electors. Have there been electors who have voted opposite of the way the people in their state voted? The answer is yes. Have there been lots of them? Yes. Have they influenced the outcome of the election? Yes. Let me give you one example. In 1948, a Southern elector did not like my buddy, Harry Truman, because Truman was pushing civil rights, immigration for refugees from the Holocaust, and universal health care. I mean, Truman was pushing all this stuff. So one Southerner refused to vote for Truman. Instead, he voted for Strom Thurmond. Was he able to do it? Yes. In 1976, a Republican elector did not like Jerry Ford, the Republican nominee, so he wrote in Ronald Reagan. Was he allowed to do it? Yes. In 1988, a Democratic elector, do you remember the Democratic ticket in 88? It was Lloyd Benston and Mike Dukakis. So this guy didn't like Dukakis, so he flipped the ticket and made it Benston-Dukakis instead of Dukakis-Benston. In 2000, a Democratic elector from Washington, D.C., refused to cast a vote. She did it to protest the Bush versus Gore debacle. So you need a majority to win 270. Number 10, who's going to win? I saved that one for last. Okay? So here you go. Right now, you and I can accurately predict how 40 out of the 50 states are going to vote. And we can throw D.C. in. Why? Because if you look at the last 5 presidential elections, 40 of the 50 states voted the exact same way, and it wasn't even close. For example, so Susan and Jarvis, if my students are on, here's your assignment. Are you ready? So who's going to win Hawaii? The Democrat. Why? They always do. Who's going to win Alaska? The Republican. Why? They always do. Those states are a done deal. In fact, I'm going to tell you who's going to win Hawaii and Alaska in 2024 and 2028. The Democrat in Hawaii and the Republican in Alaska. It's not even close. Who's going to win the left coast? Oregon, Washington, and California. The Democrat, because they always do. Who's going to win the Rockies and the Big Sky country? Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Utah, Idaho. The Republican, because they always do. What about the breadbasket? Oklahoma, Nebraska, and Kansas. The Republican, because they always do. Who's going to win the South? Texas, Louisiana, Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, South Carolina, Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia. The Republican, because they always do. Who's going to win the Northeast? Vermont, New York, New Jersey, Maryland, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island. The Democrat, because they always do. Who's going to win D.C.? The Democrat, because they always do. By the way, a prediction of mine, if Biden wins, we could see a serious move for D.C. statehood during his term in office. And I think it's overdue. D.C. has the same population as Wyoming, North Dakota, several states, at any rate. So the Republicans can rely on the South, as you can see from my graph. The Democrats can rely on the Northeast. And the election will come down to anywhere from 3 to 8 states. So if you look at the Electoral College, so let me show you this. Every 4 years, it looks the same, because almost all the states vote the same way. Here's the Electoral College in 2000, which looks like 2004, which looks like 2008, which looks like 2012, which looks like 2016, and it'll look that way in 2020. So, which states should you keep an eye on? I have 3 columns here, or 3 figures here. The big 3. There are 3 big swing states: Florida, Pennsylvania, and Ohio. Together, they account for 70 electoral votes. 70. So if one person wins all 3, this thing's over, because it's such a big margin. Why are those 3 important? Because they're the 3 largest swing states. California's bigger, but it's not in play. It always votes Democratic. Texas is bigger, but it's not in play because it always votes Republican. New York's a big state, but it's not in play because it always votes Democratic. So these are the 3 big swing states. Every analyst says this. Some of you may remember all the years that I did the political analysis for NBC and PBS, WPTV5, and PBS Channel 2 in Miami. I would come on for days and tell everybody, keep your eye on the big 3. If somebody wins all 3, good night. And consequently, on 2008, on election night, the polls are open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., right, everybody? So around 7 p.m., when we start to add things up, in 2008, I had gotten all my NBC, exit polling and all my data. And before the commercial break, going into 7 o'clock, going into what we call the top of the hour, I looked at it, and Barack Obama was winning around the country, but he was ahead in Florida, Pennsylvania, and Ohio. Now, the Panhandle in Florida is 1 hour behind us. Some would say 100 years. The Panhandle didn't finish voting, and we know it's going to vote overwhelmingly Republican, but there's not many votes there. In Pennsylvania, Philadelphia was still counting, and Philadelphia is one of the bluest cities in the country. So whatever lead Obama had, no way it was going to be even bigger. Also, Broward County was slow getting all their votes in. And you all know, Terry can tell you all about this, that Broward, Fort Lauderdale, is one of the bluest areas in the country east of the Mississippi River. So at 7 o'clock, even though the polls were just closing, Kelly Dunn, the anchor at NBC, said, Dr. Watson, who's going to win? And I said, it's Dunn. I said, it's Obama. And he's so far ahead in those 3 swing states that pigs will fly before McCain has enough votes to win. Conversely, in 2016, same question. I looked at the polling, I looked at the returns. Trump was ahead in Florida, Pennsylvania, and Ohio. And like Obama, he ended up taking all 3. So with heavy heart, I had to say Trump's the 45th president, and hell will freeze over if there's enough votes out there for Hillary. Now, there's 3 western swing states, Colorado, New Mexico, and Nevada. They only have 19 electoral votes. But remember, since 2000, every presidential race has been a nail-biter. So 19 votes could make a difference in those western swings. Now, all 3 of those western swings, I'm here to tell you right now, they're going to vote Democratic. They are trending blue, blue, blue. Why? A growing Latino population out west, and a lot of California expats have moved to those 3 states. So those 3 we can take out of the purple swing column and put them into the blue Democratic column. Here's the states at the bottom that both parties are gunning for. This is what will decide the election. Arizona, Florida, Michigan, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and Wisconsin. Now, the good news for the Democrats is North Carolina and Arizona should not even be in the equation. Those are reliable Republican states, but they're now 50-50. The good news for the Republicans is that Michigan and Wisconsin should not be in the equation. They should be reliable Democratic states, but they're for play. Here's your prediction for who's going to win. Biden's going to win the popular vote big and the Electoral College comfortably. So, yesterday, I went through the Electoral College and added up all 50 states in D.C. based on the polling. Here's what I have. On the left side of your screen, those are all the states that are close. But look at it. Pennsylvania, Colorado, Nevada, New Mexico, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Virginia, New Hampshire, all those states that were 50-50 are now leaning Biden by a few points. And several of them, they are leading by outside of the statistical margin of error. You've all seen in polling, it says, Biden at 55, Trump at 43, and 2 undecided or whatever. Plus or minus 3-point statistical margin of error. What does that mean? Here's what it means. If Biden's at, let's say, 55, we're at the 0.05 statistical significance level. What that means in plain English is we're 95% certain. So if Biden's at 55, plus or minus 3 means he's somewhere between plus 58, minus 3, 55 minus 3, 52. Okay? Biden is ahead of Trump in all those states outside of the margin of error. So Biden's going to win all those states. If you add up the states now, look in the purple on your screen. This is what I got yesterday. Biden 290, Trump 163, 85, toss-up. How many votes do you need to be president, everyone? 270. Biden's got it. Let's look at the 4 toss-up states. Florida, Ohio, North Carolina, and Iowa. Now, theoretically, and don't jump at me, I'm going to explain myself. Theoretically, Biden can lose all 4. They almost don't even matter. And he still wins. Now, we want to win those 4. We really want to win Florida. Because what's going to happen is people are going to vote at the top of the ticket for Biden, top of the ticket for Trump. They're going to go straight down the ticket and vote Democratic or Republican. And we have a lot of good Democrats in the state. We need them to win. So we need to carry Florida. Plus, it's symbolically important to win the largest swing state in the country. So even if, based on what I have there, 290 to 163, even if all 85 too close to call states go Trump, Biden still wins. Okay? Florida is the most important state, as we all know. Florida has become the national bellwether. What does that mean? As Florida goes, and by the way, it's 8 o'clock already. I'll finish this soon, I promise. Let me do like 2-3 more slides and I'll end it. Florida's the national bellwether.
Keep going.
Okay, thank you. As Florida goes, so goes the country. Why? Get this. From 1960 until today, the person that won Florida went on to be president every single time but once. Get this. For the last century, for 100 years, the person that has won Florida has gone on to be president every single time but twice. The Republicans need Florida. I want to win Florida more than any other state. I know Terry and Lori do and Ken does. But the Republicans need Florida more than we do. If we win Florida, I'm willing to say it's over. Trump's got to win Florida. Get this, the last Republican to win the presidency without Florida was Calvin Coolidge. How's that? The second reason why Florida is the national bellwether is we tend to look at demographics when we make predictions. So I used to, as you know, I used to do a lot of predicting. I went 6 for 6 in 6 presidential elections. Then I blew 2016, so I no longer make big predictions. I did for you, but I haven't been for anyone else. And I gave up doing it for the media outlets. So when we make predictions, what we do is we don't just say, how's Florida going to vote? We break out the demographic groups. What's the black vote going to do? What's the Jewish vote going to do? What's the Latino vote? What's the gay vote? What's the youth vote? What's labor? That's how you do it. And everyone knows Florida's the bellwether. So one of the things I liked when for years I was our analyst for NBC and PBS down here is I got calls from media outlets, and the Romney campaign called me, even though I'm a Democrat, and asked what's happening in Florida, because everybody wants to know about Florida. So Florida's the bellwether for this reason. We have one of the nation's largest black populations. So there we go. We have one of the nation's largest Latino populations. We have one of the nation's largest Jewish populations. We have the nation's largest senior citizen population. We have the nation's largest veterans population. We have one of the largest youth populations. We have a large gay population. You get the point? So every major demographic group we have in huge numbers, so therefore it's Florida. You know, if you look at my map here, we have 67 counties in Florida. Most of them are red Republican, but nobody lives there. The Democrats only have a few blue counties, but that's where everybody lives. So North Florida tends to be red Republican. What's the joke? If you take North Florida and cut it off and give it to Alabama, you could raise the IQ of both states. The other joke is the further north you go, the further south you are, okay? So now if you look in North Florida up there as you're getting into the Panhandle, there's a little blue cluster. That's Tallahassee. It's the state capital. Get this. In every state in the country, the state capital is Democratic. Why? There's universities. We have Florida A&M and Florida State and a community college. There's more educated people. There's a lot of lawyers. There's government employees and so forth and so on. There's a blue dot in north central Florida. That's Gainesville, a big university. Every university town in the country is Democratic, even in the South. And of course, us in Southeast Florida, with Monroe County, Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach County, where all the people live. So I'm well aware of every time I try to drive on I-95. So Florida is the most important state, everybody. This is for all the marbles. I'm going to skip this for the sake of time. I'll leave you with a couple of ideas. Here's some people you might want to look at. I'm a fan of Nate Silver's. I think he's maybe the second best analyst in the business. He got it the best. He was the closest of any major analyst in 2008 and 2012. He did get 2016 wrong. What Nate Silver does, although Hillary won by 3 million votes, which is the largest margin of victory in American electoral history. Let's remember that. Now, what Nate Silver does is he uses data analytics. He's developed a mathematical algorithm. He punches in reams of data and it spits out who's going to win. Nate Silver was 1/100th of a percent off. And I remember back in 2008 when he burst on the scene with his predictions, I thought, this guy's not even shaving yet. What the hell does he know? I'm old and crusty. I'm going to make the decision. Silver got it. So keep an eye on Nate Silver. His website's 538. And he handicaps all the races and states, so it's a good source for you. Congressional Quarterly is a good source. Larry Sabato from the University of Virginia, even though I'm a Virginia Tech guy. Larry Sabato at UVA, his crystal ball is very good. Charlie Cook is good. But here's the guy who's the best in the biz. Alan Lichtman. He's a professor from American University, where my son goes to school. He's 9 for 9. Alan is the only major analyst to call 2016. Alan uses 13 data points, and he said 7 went to Trump, 6 went to Hillary. Here's what he said in 2016. Hillary will win the popular vote big. Trump will take the Electoral College by 2 or 3 states. He's weighed in on Biden and Trump. Here's what he said. It's 7-6 again for Biden. Biden will win the popular vote big. He'll win the Electoral College by 2 or 3 states. Alan Lichtman's a good guy, a Brandeis grad, by the way. Bad toupee, good guy. So Alan's sharp. So check out Alan Lichtman. He's on all the news shows now, breaking it down for you. Here's something fun, just for the hell of it. All the years that I did media, I needed to kill time because I would be on for days and weeks before the election. So what I tracked is Halloween mask sales. You're 8 for 8. Halloween is just 4 days before the election. Whichever candidate sells more masks wins. Trump will sell more masks than Biden because he's the scariest thing I can think of. That means advantage Trump. Here's the other one that's just weird. This is some weird thing I picked up and I've written about and talked about in the news for over 20 years. Vigo County, Indiana. Get this, everybody. This little county in western Indiana is 16 for 16. The last 16 presidential elections, including 2016, that I got wrong, everybody got wrong. Vigo County always calls the president. But what's more, if they have the Democrat by 3 points, the Democrat wins by 3. If they have the Republican by 2, the Republican wins by 2. So take a look at Vigo County. A few other analysts talk about this, mostly for fun. I don't know what it is about Vigo County. I've not been there, and I don't want to go either. So I did want to do a whole thing on how Trump is the worst president in history. It takes an hour, so I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to say this. I'll end with this thought. We all thought that our system of government and our American institutions were robust and could withstand a lot. We all thought that the U.S. was governable. We were a rational public. We were civically minded. And we've been blessed in this country, whenever we faced a crisis, to have the likes of a George Washington, an Abraham Lincoln, a Harry Truman at the helm. Well, Donald Trump is the worst threat to our Constitution and the rule of law since World War II. He is the biggest threat to the Constitution and rule by law domestically since the Civil War. Donald Trump is a threat to the rule of law, the Constitution. He's been shredding it. He has appointed people that are fantastically unqualified. He has violated the Constitution and rule of law on a daily basis. Take the Emoluments Clause, which every other president followed. Take ignoring dozens of subpoenas. If Obama had done this, he would have been impeached and arrested immediately. Trump has had more senior advisors arrested and indicted than the last 6-7 presidents put together by a large margin. The framers, the founders of the Constitution, when they gathered in the hot, humid summer of 1787 in Philadelphia, they were putting together a new system of government which had never been seen before on the earth. They went beyond the Roman Senate, beyond the classic Greek philosophers. But they didn't know how this system would work. Could people vote? Would government, as Lincoln would later call it, of, by, for the people, really work? The number one concern of the framers was, how do we prevent a corrupt dictator from shredding the Constitution? Sad to say, that was even more pressing to them than slavery, which is probably the second big one. So the framers put, by my count, somebody spent 30 years reading, teaching, and writing about the Constitution, 5 fail-safe measures in. They relied on the power of American institutions, checks and balances, and separation of powers. They even said that the majesty of the office will make a president mature and rise up, and as Lincoln would later say, governed by his better angels. We've seen Trump do the exact opposite. Who would have thought in under 4 years, one single corrupt realtor would threaten the rule of law, weaken American institutions, divide the nation, disengage from all of our important international fabric of this Constitution nation.
That's a pandemic.
Who would have thought that, in addition to this one corrupt realtor, the entire Republican Party would sell out and back dictators in Russia, China, North Korea, and Turkey over the United States military, intelligence community, and so on. So, and I had a whole big talk. I was going to do that. I'm going to spare you it because we're way overdue. Let me get questions. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Paul. And again, thank you, Terry, our state chair and leader. And thank you, Senator Berman, a fantastic member of the legislature, one of my favorite politicians.
Okay, thank you, Robert. I guess we'll take a few questions. We have everybody got it. You have to unmute if you're going to ask a question.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Dr. Watson, thank you so much. After 2016, I'm a little skeptical about getting too excited about your numbers. But my question is, how do you account for 42% of the population, including people who we always thought were intelligent people, not all people who are carrying AK-47s, how do you account for them all backing such a person who we know and is so obviously inept?
Sandy, that's the million-dollar question. Like all of you, I've started drinking heavily the last 4 years. I've gone from being an optimist to being a pessimist, I would say realist. As you know, I'm not a professor for the money. You all know me. I'm nerdy. I love my history. I love my Constitution. I'm happiest when I'm walking around a museum or a battlefield talking about Harry Truman or Hamilton or George Washington or something. I have been sickened by Trump. He is the worst president we've ever had. I've had the great honor the last 15, 20 years of being picked to be one of those couple historians that every 2 years or so rank the presidents. You've all seen the presidential ranking polls. David McCullough and Doris Kearns Goodwin and John Meekum, some of my heroes. But I've had the great honor to do that. And I always get a kick out of the rankings because they always have those three and like Harvard, Yale professor. Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and Lynn. So, at any rate, I put my reputation on it. Trump is the worst president we've ever had. A year and a half ago, we were asked to rank and think where we would put Trump. And everybody said it's too early to rank, but everybody agreed he was the worst president we've ever had. It was unanimous. But here's the thing, Sandy, that has upset me the most. I can't believe that over 40% of my fellow Americans are okay with Trump making fun of a disabled reporter. Remember, Republicans at worst laughed, at best kept quiet. I can't believe that 40-some% of the American public is okay with Trump making fun of POWs and John McCain posthumously. I might not have agreed with McCain's politics. I had a great meeting and work with him on a project, meeting 3 times. He was a hero, any way you cut it. Trump made fun of him posthumously, and even McCain's friends and colleagues in the Senate were quiet. Trump made fun of a Gold Star family who buried their child. I never thought I'd live to see the day when Americans laugh as a president, much less anyone, right, makes fun of a Gold Star family, and they laughed and they clapped. You, if you're like me, I've been to Trump rallies. I covered him when I was doing it for NBC. He would brag about molesting women and make fun of people, and people would laugh and clap. I never thought I'd live to see the day. Trump has sided with dictators over the United States and the military. He called military folks losers and suckers. I never thought I'd live to see the day. Sandy, there is no explanation. I would only offer the following. 1, not everybody is rational. You and I look at things rationally through reason and facts. Trump has declared war on the truth and facts. We've all had a conversation with a Republican where I could basically say to them, well, let me rephrase it. I haven't had conversations with them. They call me on the phone and tell me to F myself, or they curse me at Publix or when I'm getting gas. But you could say 1 and 1 is 2, and they go, no, it's not. So they're not rational. They're utterly irrational. You could say Trump made fun of a Gold Star family, and they'll say at best, no, he didn't. The Democrats photoshopped that. At worst, they'll say, well, Trump's a tough guy, and we need a tough guy. It's utterly shocking to me. to the point where 40-some% of the country believe the QAnon conspiracy theories, where they don't believe in evolution. They don't believe in vaccinating their children. When we get a vaccination, we're not out of the woods because the Trumpers and Republicans won't vaccinate. They don't believe in climate change. They don't believe in the coronavirus. I've had people look at me and laugh at me because I'm wearing a mask and then mumble something. They don't believe in coronavirus. They don't believe in science. Here's the other explanation I'd offer, Sandy. Cognitive dissonance. Psychologists would tell us when you only consume something, one source, all day long, become wedded, cemented in your views and more extreme. Has anybody tried to watch Fox or listen to this hate radio, Hannity and these people? It's all anger, lies, and hate. And people listen to that all day, all night. I hate to say it. It's something I would never, ever say in the past. I now say it. Joseph Goebbels was right. The bigger the lie, more people will believe it. If you tell a lie enough, people believe it. A sucker's born every minute. And emotion is a more powerful factor than reason or rationality. Sandy, it's mind-numbing to me. That's why I drink now. I'm utterly depressed that over 40% of my fellow Americans are okay with a guy that says Kim Jong-un is funny and a good guy. No, he's not. He's a mass-murdering, psychopathic dictator. Trump got us out of the nuclear agreement with Russia. Why? Because Putin wanted him out. Who puts Putin ahead of the U.S. national security? Trump got out of the Singapore Accords. This was a multilateral, multinational agreement, even with China, where we worked to keep our eye on Kim Jong-un and control it. Trump got out of that. Why? Because Kim Jong-un wanted him to. Trump's talking all this that Biden's soft on China. Remember, Trump got out of the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which was a dozen-nation alliance where a dozen nations in China's neighborhood, Taiwan and Japan and South Korea and Malaysia and Singapore and Indonesia, they're too small to stand up to China. But if all 12 of them are aligned together with us, it's an economic buttress, it's a military buttress, it's a political buttress against China's expansionism. The only person that didn't want that was China's leader, and Trump got out of it as a gift to him. So I don't have an explanation other than cognitive dissonance, irrationality. I hate to think that 40-some% of the public is that dumb, that bigoted, that irrational, but there is no other explanation.
Well, thank you very much. I feel so much better now. Just kidding.
Drink later tonight.
I have a question. What can we do to protect ourselves in the 3 months that he has, even if Biden wins? What are we going to do?
Those of you that follow the blogs, or if you talk to reporters, I still talk to reporters all the time, even though I'm not doing daily media anymore. And everybody's saying, if Trump loses, you ain't seen nothing yet. I mean, he has been a wrecking ball. Trump has weakened and politicized the Department of Justice, the FBI, the military, sacred American institutions. He's declared war on the free press, called the enemy of the people. If Trump loses, you ain't seen nothing yet. He's weakened the Clean Air Act. You all know that. He's weakened the Clean Water Act. We now allow more particulate matters per million, ppm, in air pollution. He's weakened the Endangered Species Act. And one of my concerns with climate change, the Endangered Species Act, Clean Air, Clean Water, is that train may have left the station. He has done irreparable damage in the last 4 years. If Trump were to be abducted by aliens tomorrow, we're not out of the woods. We still have 40-some% of the country that doesn't believe in science. And we have to renew and reinvigorate our alliances around the world. We need to re-engage with treaties. The good news is probably no one other than Obama and Bill Clinton and Hillary know more world leaders than Joe Biden. Remember, he was a senior member of the Foreign Relations Committee for forever, and he was VP. We need to reinvigorate all that. We need a Democratic Congress, everybody, because we have to reinforce the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act. Look, the days after this election, the Supreme Court is going to hear a case on the Affordable Care Act. what's left of it, including pre-existing conditions. And Biden was correct when he talked about how many millions of Americans have pre-existing conditions to some extent. I mean, with Amy Coney Barrett on it, who had the audacity the other day to say she doesn't have strong feelings or opinions about climate change. Really?
Dr. Watson?
Yeah, that could be chipped away and that could be problematic. Who is that?
Harry?
Harry!
How are you?
Hi, Harry.
As usual,
Democratic leaders. Here's one who's been doing this for years. Harry. So, bye.
great discussion as usual. I have a comment for you, Dr. Watson.
It's raised, they can't unraise it.
Go ahead, Harry.
Go ahead, Harry.
I just have a comment. I think a lot of the credit to Trump and what he's done falls into the hands of 53 senators. And I don't think we give enough credence to getting rid of some of those senators so we get that majority.
Yeah, Mitch McConnell's been the second most dangerous person in the world the last 4 years. He has enabled Trump on all this. Again, as I said earlier in my talk, the Constitution requires advice and consent in a timely manner. You need to vote and have hearings. He literally held off dozens and dozens of judgeships under Obama. That is against the Constitution, everybody. I am livid at what he did, and nobody listens to me. I was screaming my head off on the media and in lectures back when Obama was president saying, this is unconstitutional. Mitch McConnell should be dragged out of there in handcuffs. You can't violate the Constitution like that. He's sitting on, goodness, Pelosi and the Democrats put an economic relief plan, COVID relief, all sorts of things, as Terry, Lori, and all of you know really well. But McConnell won't move on it in the Senate. People dying, everyone. We can use the line, vote like your life depends on it, because these days, it really does. And, Terry knows me, you guys know me well. I'm never this passionate or this blunt. I never am like this, but in my lifetime, I've never seen anything like it. I'll tell you where I've seen it. 30 years as a history professor reading about dictators around the world. Salazar, Tojo, Franco, Mussolini, Genghis Khan. That's where I've seen this stuff. It's alarming to me that the American public rolls over so easily on this. Yeah, you're right, Harry. We need the House. We have the House. We need to build them. We need the Senate. We also need local. We need governorships. As the federal government does virtually nothing anymore, the action has moved to the local level. So we need people like Senator Berman. We need quality people in the state legislatures, because that's where a lot of the action is moving. My God, Florida needs a Democratic governor. After 2 terms of Jeb, after 2 terms of Rick Scott, and now DeSantis, they have made irreparable harm on the state. In the next election, we need to get a Democratic governor. So, yeah, top to bottom of the ticket, everybody.
Who's the Lord?
Alan Lazard. Alan?
Alan and then Steve. I thought I saw Alan and Steve.
Thank you.
Dr. Watson, when Nate Silver pushes all his data through his predictions, I assume he can't account for the amount of cheating that Trump will plan on doing.
Yeah, so Alan Lichtman, Nate Silver. Well, when I used to do this, when I used to make predictions, I had my model as well. I looked at whether the state was in Democratic or Republican hands in the governor's office, how they voted in the last 3 elections. Then I took the 5 leading polls, I averaged them together over 3 days and took the 3-day average. So I take the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday poll, average them together, reported Thursday. And then on Friday, I would drop Monday and take the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday 3-day average. Get the point? We all have our ways, but none of them count for cheating. You're right, Alan. So as I mentioned earlier, I think Biden's going to win this big popular vote, and I think he's going to win the electoral vote.
Dr. Watson?
Hold
I want to
on.
refresh your memory about something you said.
Brian, hold on.
My only concern is the corruption, the cheating. That I think that Republican states are going to try to throw out hundreds of thousands of vote by mail ballots. I think they're going to lean on the states. I think there's going to be a misinformation campaign. That's my concern, so I'm with you, Alan. Steve had his hand up next.
Stephen and Brian.
So Stephen and Brian.
Dr. Watson?
No, Brian, Steve was next.
Go ahead,
Dr. Watson. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Good. Thank you. In the interim between the election and the giving up the presidency, a lot of damage can be done. Who do you think is the biggest and most reliable enabler for Trump, Barr or McConnell, or is it a tie?
It's a tie. So, Steve, no question, you hit the nail on the head twice. I suspect everybody would agree with me. I've had this conversation with countless friends, and we keep coming back to the three most dangerous people are Trump, McConnell, and Barr. McConnell has violated countless norms. Everybody, you know this. Federal U.S. attorneys are supposed to be non-political and not intimidated or removed. These guys have been threatening and removing whistleblowers, inspectors general, internal auditors. Barr has politicized the Justice Department all the way back to impeachment and the report. He misconstrued Robert Mueller's report, blatantly lied about it. But then McConnell sat on dozens and dozens of judges. He's sitting on hundreds of pieces of legislation. So you get rid of Trump, you get rid of Barr. And McConnell, we need to beat McConnell in Kentucky. So yeah, I agree with you. And Steve, tell Judy I said hello, and you guys keep all those ice creams cold in your freezer. I miss coming over for our nightly ice cream, okay? Brian, hand up.
Okay, Dr. Watson,
I want to go to Terry.
Go back 4 years ago after the election, and you mentioned a story that you were covering the I guess the election process, the campaigning. You said you went to a Trump rally and there was people foaming at the mouth, enthusiasm, emotion. In fact, you said you sent your camera crew out because they were afraid that they might be attacked.
Good memory.
So the story, you went to a Clinton rally. Oh, that's very nice. Oh, good. No emotion at all. So what you have here, and the thing that worries me, is, as you said, one of the key factors is emotion over fact. That's what Trump is trying to resurrect now. Lock them all up now, etc. And I guess the thing that I'm afraid about is that the former vice president is sheltering himself in his wherever basement.
No, he's out and about.
Up for the debate, whatever you call it, and so that's what I'm afraid of.
So yeah, well, I'll agree with
of emotion versus fact.
I agree with you on that, Brian. It's hard to talk rationally and factually to people that don't believe in it. But Joe Biden is out. He's just being out and about responsibly. We've seen, check out Obama's social media account. Michelle taped some very powerful videos. Democratic Party is out and about. I'll give those two examples. Then I want to allow Senator Berman and our state chair, Terry, to say a word to close this thing out. I've talked enough. I covered for WPTV, NBC affiliate. I also used to write a Sunday column for the Sun Sentinel, and I did Sunday's show on Channel 2, and all for years and years and years. So I covered rallies, several of them. The two that really stuck out to me. One was here in South Florida, and we had a camera crew, as Brian correctly remembered, and a guy drove the truck, and there was a female reporter. And I remember she was young, new, and petite. And I say that because it has relevance to the story. We pulled up to cover the Trump rally, and then I drove up and met them there. We called them a cell, and I drove up and met them there. The young reporter, she's getting her mic out. She was looking in a mirror, doing her hair, and putting some makeup on, as all reporters, male and female, do. The driver stopped the truck and was dragging the big cameras out. And the Trump people started walking over to see us, and they started screaming at us, fake news, F you. This was in 2016. Can you imagine now? F you, fake news, screaming and screaming. And the young reporter, she got unnerved, very unnerved, I think because she new on the job. And I looked at the crowd, and they kept lurching closer and closer. And I said, everybody stand down. I said, do you want us to cover your boy, Trump? I said, we're not going to be able to hear him if you keep yelling, F you, just screaming and going, veins, eyes bulging, red in the face. And, I stepped between them because they were getting real close. I thought, they're going to break the camera, or one of them's going to bust a window out on the van. And those of you that know me know, one, I'm not afraid of things. Two, I'm a pretty big guy. I played football, Division I football. Nothing, scares me. But I thought they were going to destroy the van. So I turned around and I told the driver and the reporter, get in the van and drive down, call me later, or meet at another location. And the crowd was like, yeah, you're leaving, going nuts. Now, I'm an easygoing guy, 58, and most people that have known me have never seen me. My sister's on the call. She's probably never seen me get in a fight. I'm really easygoing, but I'm a guy, and I couldn't leave. So I stood there in front of this frothing crowd of Trump people going nuts and said, okay, what are you going to do? And I shouldn't have done that, and it was so unlike me, but I was so angry, but I didn't want to show it. And they stood there yelling at you for a while, and I said, aren't you pleased? Now, what if we don't cover your boy? And then I drove away, and we just filmed it from the other side. The second one that got to me was in Denver, Colorado. I was there for the Denver Jewish Book Festival for my book about the Nazi Titanic, about the end of the Holocaust and the war. And I was having a great time because I love talking about my book. I love book festivals. I'm super nerdy like that. Met some cool authors. I sold boxes of books. And I love Denver. So I went downtown in Denver, and I told WPTV, this is a big Trump rally in a swing state. I'll cover it for you. So I took a little camera and mic with me. And I remember it was nice weather, so I had shorts and was dressed like this from the top up, like I am right now. So, no socks. At any rate, so I go downtown to Denver, and I'm like, let me cover the rally. And I walked up, and it was unlike anything I've ever seen. I don't lock my door. I don't lock my bike. I forget. I'm easygoing. I was unnerved. Trump started with the locker up, and the locker up turned to effing locker up. F Hillary. And I'm talking about thousands of people. It reminded me of goose stepping. I was alarmed. I even had the feeling, and I never get unnerved, that if a young immigrant kid walked by, they would have grabbed him and attacked him. They were frothing at the mouth. So I'm unnerved. I'm like, okay, I need to get my story. So you want to pick soccer moms. That's who everybody interviews. So there's two women in front of me, white, average height, average build, wearing the mommy jeans. And they both had blue long-sleeve shirts on. So I tap them on the shoulder, and I'm off to the side. And I said, excuse me, ladies. And they turned around. They both had matching blue long-sleeve shirts, and with red and white letters, it said Trump in all capitals at the top. Underneath it, it said, you can grab my pussy anytime. Now, I'm an easygoing guy. I like comedians. I have an appetite, but I'm also an unapologetic feminist and the father of a daughter who loves his sister, loved his mother, so forth, right? So I was in shock, and my mouth fell open. They both looked at me, and they started laughing, and then they hold their shirts up going, you can grab my pussy. And then they start grabbing their crotch going, hey, Trump, oh, I'll let him grab mine. And I wanted to say to them, do you have a teenage daughter? Because Trump is a guy who does grab people. And they were laughing about it. Then the whole crowd turns around, and they start looking at me. And I remember one guy gets in my face, and he came up to about here on me, and he got in my chest. And he starts yelling, I bet you have a pussy. I bet you're a limp. You want me to grab your pussy? And I was just standing there, and I thought, oh my God, am I going to get into a fight with 8,000 people? It was crazy. And I should have filmed it. But I was so distraught that I walked away, and I'm like, it just ruined my weekend in Denver. So I went and got a beer, got a ride, got a burrito, and went back to my hotel room and did everything but curl up in fetal position. It was so disturbing. And you've had these conversations with people. I think because of what I do, which is this. I have been at gas stations. I was at the gas station by Walmart just about a week or two ago because it's cheap. Two guys at a pump that were in a car together, I heard them talking, and I could hear, and I'm like, oh, God, they recognize me, and they're talking. And then sure enough, one of them goes, hey, F you. And I turned over and looked, and he's like, you're a communist. We're making America great again. And I thought, what happened to civil discourse? In fact, this is the last thing. What's happened to civility, decency, decorum, science, the truth, dignity, honor? I mean, my gosh. Let me turn this over for a goodbye, if I can, Ken and Paul, to Terry and Senator Lori, and thanks, everybody.
I'm going to
Great job,
personal
Dr.
privilege.
Watson.
One question for you, Robert. If Biden wins, Trump refuses to leave office, who's going to step up and remove him?
I'm both concerned and not concerned about that. I'm not concerned because the Marshal Service, they will escort him out of the building. I'm not at all concerned about that. Here's what I am concerned about: the optics. The Trumpers will take to the streets. You know, I get people that call me and threaten me. I've had multiple cases where people come up to me in the aisle at Publix and they want to fight. I'm usually a head taller than them, so they don't. But I mean, if it's this way, can you imagine? You remember when people with machine guns surrounded the Michigan State House? Remember that, Terry? When they surrounded, watching that. All I could think was, if they were black, could you imagine what to do? But white Trumpers are allowed to. So I'm not worried about that. He will be removed. I'm not worried about him staying. I'm just worried about the violence that I was. Let me just let Terry and Senator Lori.
Thank you very much, Terry. Do you have any final comments you'd like to?
Just to thank Robert again for the great lessons tonight and all the analysis. Everything you said is absolutely 100% spot on. And that all of these scenarios are being previewed by, of course, the national folks. You know, that everybody is very well aware of this, and contingency plans are in place, and that is not unforeseen. So all of that is being addressed, will be addressed. And also just to address the enthusiasm question, because we hear that a lot, you know, and because they're so rabid and they're so out there. They're also at these super spreader events. You know, they're standing shoulder to shoulder and spreading COVID. Democrats stopped doing that early this summer, and Joe Biden is out there now, but doing car rallies, for example. There are massive events. There was a 1,000-car caravan in Miami this past weekend with the Hispanic community. As you know, the second lady to be was in Orlando and Jacksonville, two massive events this weekend, just Monday. So the Democratic enthusiasm is off the charts. It's just not as visible because we don't see it. I think having 500,000 vote by mail margin already shows a tremendous amount of enthusiasm. And I think our Democrats are enthusiastic and are doing it the way that it counts in by voting. But it's something that we need to continue. Just because we're not as visible doesn't mean we're not there and we're not enthusiastic. Look at all of you. Are you not enthusiastic? Are you not more enthusiastic than you've ever been? Yes, you are. And so that's what we see across the state. So, and that's just because we don't see them, you know, shoulder to shoulder and spreading, coronavirus doesn't mean we're not enthusiastic.
Yeah, Terry's got all the bases covered. You should know that. You've been thanks, Terry. Is Senator Lori on? I saw her. It was.
Yes. Yes, I'm back.
Okay.
All right, I'm back on.
Go ahead, Lori.
I just want to say good night to all of you. Thank you. We have our work cut out for us. We have the next 12 days. Please do everything you can. And call your neighbors, your friends, your children, your grandchildren. This is it. You heard a compelling case from Dr. Watson. What could happen on election day and in the days afterwards? And so there's no question what we need to be doing here in the state of Florida. So thank you all so much for everything that you're doing, and thank you, Dr. Watson and Terry, for an amazing program this evening.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Dr. Watson. At this time, I just want to recognize the club officers: President Ed Soul, Vice President Techman Ken Summers, Vice President Debbie Cantor, Vice President Nate Smith, Secretary Arnie Mollett, Parliamentarian Bert Bauman, Directors Gil Handler, Toby Solomon, Carol Estes, and Treasurer Sandy Kravitz. I want to thank everybody for attending tonight's United South County Democratic Club meeting. Thank you, Terry, Rizzo again, and Dr. Watson. Remember, every vote counts. Please encourage all your friends and relatives to make sure they cast their ballots either in person, via drop box, or all early voting stations that are using the U.S. mail. If using the U.S. mail Please vote early. Make sure your vote is counted on November 3rd. Everyone be well, stay safe, and good night.
Can I say something quickly?
Sure.
Hi, I just wanted to say quickly that my name is Chad Alvarez. I'm running for the Palm Beach County Soil and Water District Conservation, Group 3, and I'm the only Democrat in the group. So if you guys would vote for me, I'd love that so much. It'd be great.
Put it all the way down the ballot, straight ticket.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Take care. Have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Take care, guys.
Thank you. Robert, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Got one suggestion. Because I was in the dark part of the time. I suggest you get a ring light, better lighting.
Oh, better lighting? Well, that way people would see me with better lighting. I was doing everyone a favor. Next time I'm turning all the lights off. I could see Ken was trying to wink to me to tell me that. We'll put Ed Sol on. He's a handsome guy. Thanks, Paul.
Okay, take care now.
Take care. Bye, everybody.